Hello, everybody, and welcome to the first Pull Up Trade podcast that has ever been recorded while the Raptors are not actively playing basketball. Not in that we only record during live game time, but rather that the Raptors have been ousted. They won't be in the playoffs. They were briefly in the postseason, and they lost to the Chicago Bulls in the 9-10 series. You'll see on screen, if you're listening on YouTube, that there are two representatives from Dioranto. Obviously, that was a big storyline. We have Nabeel and S, friends of the show, who are just hopping on. We kind of wanted to, group chat this thing as the Raptors failed horribly. For myself, I watched. I covered the game, watched the game. The commute was crazy. I had to write a piece. Then I had to commute for exit interviews. Then I was at exit interviews for like 6 hours. The final sum of all of this is it's 6 p.m. the next day. I have not slept yet. So if there's any deliriousness, please excuse me. Hey, let's go in order. S, how the hell are you?
I'm good, man. I did not know. I had to commute last night too, and it was the worst I've ever experienced commuting. It's because the Jays game was also happening at the same time. So it was just you're like this in a subway, just waiting for the train to come. So yeah, I feel you on the commute, brother. I was there. I
Can
felt
of sardines. You know who else probably feels squeezed right now? Trey, because of our Gossman and Manoa bet. Gossman twirling more gems last night. Trey, how are you doing?
Oh, we've had better days.
We traded him first.
And so this was actually S popped on because he's extremely gracious. Nabeel has been plotting on this podcast for some time now. I'll set the stage for everybody. Nabeel basically is in the friend group, the guy who is peaking at Tankathon and who is fervently against reinvesting in this core. Many people probably looking at the situation right now are saying that's the guy who is correct. We want to listen to that guy. And guess what? You get to Nabeel. The floor is yours. The Raptors, they are, I guess, getting a little bit better pick now. How are you feeling over there?
I don't even know why I'm sweating, man. I'm not even that pro tank. This is.
What do you mean? You yelled Kobe Bufkin.
There's video proof.
I will just say, towards February, I've never consumed more college basketball. I was prepping for this moment. No, man, it's we watched the game together, some of us, and man, I'm still stunned. I can't lie. I did want us ultimately to lose and try to get the best pick possible, but I had no clue. I had I did not think we would lose that. Like I just thought from every matchup they could throw at us schematically, I just did not foresee a scenario of the Raptors losing, and here I am debuting on this pod in black to celebrate, or not to celebrate, sorry,
Celebrate.
for the funeral.
Oh, that was a Freudian slip.
Oh my god.
So, Nabeel, let's follow this thread. You got what you wanted. Like you said, you wanted the Raptors to lose. Obviously, the motivation there is that it's a better draft pick. That's obvious. We're going to talk about that later on the podcast. But what else are you looking for to accompany a higher draft pick? Like the team, if everybody comes back. I just left exit interviews. Everyone loves Nick. Everyone loves the city. They said so. What do you want to happen with the rest of the team? The contracts that are currently in flux, I would say.
It's tough. I mean, we'll touch on it more, but I think the primary motivation was, we gave up next year's first for Yak, and so we don't have that pick. And then if we do bring back everyone, which is likely in our best interest, I don't know if I could bear to see another potential or pending free agent just walk and us get nothing back in return. If we resign all this, we're likely a tax team, and we have no real way other than trades to and whatever tools are available to us to get free agents, likely the minimum and some version of the mid-level or biannual exception to add players. So this is kind of our last chance to get or add talent rather. That's on the team for the foreseeable future on a rookie scale contract, and then whatever the extension looks like after that. So I think that's what I was hoping for. But in terms of other changes, I mean, it's tough to say. I think all I know is you cannot run this team back. Like there's no chance, whether it's from a cultural standpoint or the bench group or the core. Some material sizable changes have to occur on the roster.
Okay, so obviously nobody wants to run it back because you just lost to the 10 seed and you didn't make the playoffs, and that obviously didn't go well. But as you said, you don't want to let people walk for free. So while you are kind of discussing it as like maybe it's Kobe Bufkin, maybe it's whomever, right? Being the last chance to add talent to this core, that's posturing, right? Like you want the organization to say, "Hey, we want to be kind of decent next year. Maybe the starting lineup is good. Maybe they win minutes, and that's like how you want it to go." But ultimately, you want guys traded from points of leverage, I would assume.
Yeah, essentially. I mean, whether that's through signing trade mechanisms or exploring, if you can't, agree to some sort of verbal extension. When I think Blake had tweeted that OG's eligible in October for that. If you can't come to a agreement on that, maybe you look to move him earlier than expected in the offseason or potentially at the draft. Um, yeah, it's whatever mechanisms exist for us to be able to accomplish that. I think and that's the tricky part of this all, right? Like it's literally going to have to be a Bobby and Masai masterclass. The cap tables up on the IBM Watson dashboard in the war room, just going nuts. Like it's man, I would not want to be them this offseason. It's going to be really tough.
Okay, so the floor is open to either Trey or S. The last time we all talked on a podcast was when it was what, January 3rd.
Yeah.
There was discussions of dismantling the team. All three of us voiced the support of rather than trade a first round pick, you would rather trade Fred VanVleet for a first round pick. That was the maybe the main or central talking point or like hot take. S, let's go. What do you
I
got
just
for
I
us?
just realized I have to go. So look, the only clarification I sort of want, I know, I literally duty calls, but no, the only clarification I want, and to be honest, this is really important for the summer, is can the Raptors? I have to look at it myself, but like, can the Raptors re-sign? And I know Blake has written about this before. You have talked about it before as well, but like, can
Probably
they
say me first. Just
can they re-sign all three of their UFAs and somehow still duck the tax and then be able to maneuver that way? Is there a way to still be competitive by doing that? Because that implies that you're probably moving multiple bench pieces or at least one of the core guys who are, kind of they still have their contracts there. So I want some clarification as to how that would work. You know what I mean? If because that's a huge part of this. That's a huge part of like Nabeel's master plan here too. Also, is if we can, yeah, the master plan is if the Raptors in any way, if they feel like they still want to be competitive next year, I don't see a route of them doing that without re-signing these guys in some way, or at least getting compensation back that makes sense for them to be competitive next year. Because otherwise, what was the trade deadline? How are you gonna reconcile not moving a Fred VanVleet or not moving a Gary Trent Jr. if you decide to just let these guys walk in the summer? So that's where I'm at right now. Is like, how are they gonna, like Nabeel said, like, finagle the cap space and like maneuver it in a way to make this thing work?
I'll also say that Jakob was pretty non-committal. I'm
Yeah,
gonna be honest with you.
yeah.
But before you go, Pascal, OG, Fred, you got to pick one to trade. Who would you trade?
I would probably say OG, and it's tough because
Uh,
because like at this point, what is Fred getting you if you end up trading him? I'm not sure you're getting a ton of stuff back. I mean, if the reported rumors during the deadline was like, okay, you get a 2029 first round pick and Grayson Allen and maybe some stuff there, like if that was available, then I doubt it'd be anything better in the summer. If anything, it'd be very, very worse than that. So I don't know. I think from that standpoint, you're just not going to get a lot of value back for Fred. And then when it comes to Pascal and OG, I just think it's a tough pill to swallow saying you've given up a first round pick and that you want to be competitive next year. And oh, by the way, we're going to trade our guy who is potentially an all NBA player. Like, the only guy who kind of it meets in the middle at that point is OG. He's the only guy that, okay, maybe his development hasn't tracked the way some people have expected. And maybe there's some stuff left on the bone that can be developed on other teams, and maybe other teams value him at the price point that he's at. So I think he makes sense as the guy if you're looking to move one of those guys.
It would be pretty funny if over this stretch of years that the Raptors got more draft compensation for trading their coaches than they did for trading their players. Wouldn't that be something? But yeah. Thanks for popping in. We'll talk to you later. Trey, my friend, the floor is yours. Can I get like your flashbulb thoughts on like I feel like it was bordering on going on viral, that video of you yelling, "We traded a first," and you were distraught, but it didn't quite take off. You know, it was a popular tweet, but it didn't quite get there. Tell me, can you walk me through your emotions, please? Actually, that's what I want more than anything.
Okay. Yesterday, so everyone, Makai's been on this podcast. Everyone knows he's a Bulls fan. For the last week or so, we knew that these teams were going to match up together. Me and him have been sending each other memes, talking trash this whole time. There was never a point where I thought the Raptors were going to lose this game. I've watched all the Bulls games. We've discussed their scheme at nauseum. We thought Jakob would offer some real issues for it, and he did. The Raptors played well. I sent Makai a video telling him, "Talk up now. We're up 20." This is at halftime, actually. Zach LaVine scores 14 points in the third quarter. I get a little worried. The Raptors turn the ball over, I think, 3 or 4 possessions in a row. Game's tied now. And from that point on, it's all a blur. Immediate depression. Zach LaVine hit incredible shots. And I don't think I blame like any one player, or even like there's not even anger. It's just like utter sadness of this season. And
so, yeah, that's kind of the thing that is tough.
Yeah.
Is that the Raptors moving forward, the most sensible thing is to make sure that they don't lose any more value. They don't lose any more ability to maneuver. It is probably the most sensible to enter the tax and like trade your way out of it, or trade your way into a better team, or just try and like, you got to work the phones, man. That's how you improve this team. And you also have to hope not only for more internal development, but you have to hope for internal healing. Things have not been good. Players have been upset. Coaches have been upset, oftentimes at each other. And as much as they won't come out and say it, you know, it's been happening. And so bring the band back together oftentimes is more tenable from a pragmatic point of view than it is from like a feelings point of view, which is the inverse of what it was around the deadline, right? Because the pragmatic point of view was like, don't invest deeper into this core, that might get you in trouble. And you know, the feelings was like, we like these guys, these are our guys, let's give them a shot.
Yeah,
they got their shot. It was an empty, like the chamber was empty, I guess. I don't know, it was a blank.
It's a similar, obviously not as worse, but it's a similar feeling with 2018, where they put all their bullets in the holster and said, we're gonna go at this, we're gonna go at the Cavs, we have a chance to win, and most people thought they're going to win, and there was like a clear like line in the sand and indication that they weren't good enough. Obviously at the time, like everyone wanted to blow up the team. We're never gonna win a championship, and they made like a hard turn in investing and trading like one of their core pieces. I don't think the Raptors are obviously there, but we're at a point where there needs to be a strong inclination of what they're going to do that happens this summer. Whether that's trading for a star and maybe getting older, or focusing around Scottie and OG and placing that as your future. I don't think you can let these guys go away for free. Ideally, like Fred, Gary, all these guys stay and they play better, and you can trade your way into getting younger, cheaper guys who, and
That's
also
your ideal? Like you're just keeping them until they recoup value. Like that's where you're at.
same plan as 2 episodes ago. I would say I think you still have to trade one of them. One to ideally have a pick next year, while you're because we're unsure if this is a playoff team, currently stated, and then two, just to have depth. The If we have an average marginal bench, that they probably still win this game despite the free throws.
So Fred had an interesting. Fred talked for like 30 minutes. Nurse talked for like 30 minutes. Like 5 full minutes of him was he and Grange going back and forth, and Grange being like, "The things you say, they're not true, Nick," and Nick giving him the hard stare back. It was, oh man. But anyway, Fred talked a lot, and when asked about, like, the thing that I asked him was if it was difficult, because I suspected that he had never been in a situation where everybody in the room vocalizes, "We're going to be better. We're going to bring the energy. We're going to get everything going again." And that just doesn't happen. And Fred talked about the team. I think he had a quote from last game where he was saying, like, "We're 41-41. That's the kind of team that we are." But he also mentioned today, he's like, "Well, 41-41, maybe 48 wins puts us in the 60s this season." He's like, "We must have had like 10 games that we let slip away." And to somebody who's not going to interrogate their feelings or like the sense of that at all, that might pass. But that is like completely nonsensical as analysis. That is not how the game works whatsoever.
Yeah.
In addition to that, Fred also said that they can't try and survive off the osmosis or the feelings of the championship season anymore. And like, I'm curious where you guys sit on all of that, when, because he's clearly alluding to there being a higher ceiling to this team,
Yeah.
while also saying like none of the good vibes are guaranteed anymore. None of the wins, none of the greater than the sum of its parts are guaranteed anymore. And Nabeel, we'll start with you. What do you think about that kind of commentary?
It was big Kyle Lowry's not walking through that door vibes. No, it's honestly, I thought Fred was tremendous. There were so many good quotes from his availability today, but that one stood out to me the most. I think, yeah, I think it's indicative of a lot of things. I think, firstly, if you want to touch a bit on the scheme, the aggressive helping at the nail, leaving corner shoes open, Xing out, all the nexting, switching, hyperactive rotations, just that level of play that was super exhausting, and we kind of relied on. And, now it's been a few years removed from that championship. There's been a lot of roster turnover, and how sustainable is that? But also, yeah, just the general vibes. We had an incredibly experienced and veteran team for that title run, and a lot of those players are no longer here. Even some of the coaching staff and personnel just in the Raptors, both on the basketball and non-basketball side, aren't here. There's been a lot of changes, and I think it's telling. He said it, and I think I can't recall a player or a coach or anyone in the organization coming out explicitly and being that vocal of saying something like that. So in a sense, it was refreshing to hear, but I think it is indicative of both the on-court stuff and the off-court stuff that has essentially changed since that title run.
Trey, your thoughts?
I think we've kind of talked about a lot of it like ad nauseum, especially like defensively. The the level of role players that are in the NBA now can punish a lot of the things that the Raptors do. We 2 years ago, you're okay with letting Patrick Beverley and Caruso taking those shots. This year, they kill you, and there's a big reason why we lost the game. That's been like a consistent force throughout the year. But I think this even goes from the front office. I think from as like the Raptors as a core in general, like the aura of it kind of feels like things are going to right the ship, because over, say, from 2013 to 2019, they've been correct on nearly every decision that they've made, and they've usually zigged when everyone's zagged. I think it's the opposite way, actually.
Yeah, hey,
That's better.
We got
But
this.
I think philosophically, the way that they draft needs to change. We need shot making. It's clear as day. Even when a team is playing poorly, there's guys like Zach LaVine that can get you back into a game simply because they make the toughest shots in the biggest moments. From a coaching standpoint, I don't think that you can rely on getting more possessions in order to score baskets. You need to have a foundation and be able to actually score. And then over a long period of time, it's very clear. We've seen this two seasons in a row. If you continue to drag on minutes with your top line players, there's diminishing returns. And when you get towards the end of the season, you're going to see those players that you've been relying on not fall short per se, but they aren't able to give you the same sort of level. You saw that with Fred, who Nick pushed on a lot to carry us to those 48 wins, and you saw that with Pascal, who was playing at superstar level for 2 months and really fell off with the taxing defense and minutes that he's been giving throughout the year.
I kind of want to just stick on Pascal. An up and down season for him. When he was asked about it today, he said that he wasn't pleased. He wasn't satisfied. And of course, he would go on to say, like, he's never satisfied and he's doing, like, I'm in the gym dialogue. And he's like, that's kind of like Pascal does. He's like an insane worker. He's always trying to add to his bag. But how do you guys feel about Pascal being the type of player? I know you guys have said, like, well, Trey, you had said at least one of them has to go. But is Pascal still showing as a guy who's good enough to kind of transcend timelines and you keep him on the team? Because I remember we discussed that earlier at the start of January, right? It's like Pascal's so good, you just keep him because a player this good doesn't come along. But how do we feel now after, his slump started around there? His a couple days after the 50-point game. It was an elongated slump. He goes 5 for 11 from the free throw line. It's the fan base is maybe a bit spoiled, but the fan base is not as loving or infatuated with Pascal as they may be with other players. And so, where do you guys stand on Pascal and like his future with this team? Is the max signing something you're looking forward to, or would you rather the Raptors go elsewhere?
For me, I would extend him. Even despite like his poor play, he was still engineering an entire offense and still offering defense. I think like the biggest like diminishing like returns we saw was defensively. Like the amount of miles that both him and Fred like travel throughout the year when you realize like they're top 3 in the league, and then both asked to bail the Raptors out with tough shots towards the end of clock situations. You could see why that there's a fall off 2 years in a row with both of these players. It's like clear as day. I would extend him just simply because the way that his game is, it isn't. Although he is quite athletic for his position, he's more smooth and methodical and meticulous. Whereas like someone like say Blake Griffin, if he was at 20, you would have like those like apprehensions. I think Pascal's going to age very well. I think that he benefits Scottie and OG in the way that he plays and helping them become better players and score much easier ways. And then also he fits the trope that kind of like DeMar was. If we do eventually start trickling more players and get an actual deep core, he could be that gateway that leads you to that second star or that next star that pairs with Scottie and leads you into contention.
I think, yeah, stars get the biggest return. That's just, stars always get the biggest return. They're not always the best fit for a team.
Yes.
Sometimes they don't lead you to win. Sometimes they don't do whatever. But if you have the star, you just want to, you either try and run everything back with them, try and win games, try and, ascend to a championship level team. But ultimately, like, that's where the most value is, always and forever. I'll tell you what about always and forever. You know who I appreciate always and forever? Queensway Automotive Group, the sponsor of this podcast. Let me tell you, a bunch of locations all over the GTA. Volkswagen, Mazda, Mitsubishi. They've got new, they've got pre-owned, they've got used, they've got tons of vehicles. They can take them to the location closest to you. If you want to shop around quotes, to try and compare cars and look for the best deal, they will help you with that. If you need to have your car looked at, they will help you with that. If you want to lease something, if you want to get out of lease, basically anything to do with vehicles, they can help you out. And that's actually really important because, cars are tough. It's like a soupy sales industry. You want to find somebody you can trust, somebody that'll do good by you, Queensway Automotive Group. There is a link in the bio for anybody who so chooses to support us and the sponsor of the podcast. We appreciate it very much. And once again, it does greatly. It helps out the podcast, us who you enjoy listening to. Hopefully, I'll tell you who I enjoy listening to. Nabeel, are there any other thoughts you have for us on the different aspects of the Raptors team building going forward?
No, I thought Trey summarized it really well, and I'm glad he touched on, I think, the defensive side of Pascal's game sort of falling off. And I know you've talked about it a bunch, Samson, throughout the years, and you as well, Trey. And I think it's tough. Like the steal and block numbers were down, but even the eye test, if you look at the film, it's just it across the board, especially in January, February. I was looking over those minutes again. He averaged like 38, 39 minutes both of those months. You go through the game logs and you just count the amount of 40 plus minute games that he played in it. Like man, I was grabbing my knees watching him just work and push himself into the ground, just trying to will this team to wins. And that let's be honest. Like it at times, for most of the season, it felt like he was operating in like a with spacing of like a regular college team. I mean, he always sees 2, 3 guys usually in the paint, and he still managed to average 24, 8, and 6 basically on near league average efficiency. And fingers crossed, but I don't think he's going to make the All NBA team. And if it hasn't happened, his
Fingers crossed.
This guy's trying to save the tax no matter what.
Oh man. Fingers crossed. I hope he makes it.
Fingers
but
crossed.
it just looks
like 60 million.
We know. Hey,
man.
Baker. While we have you here, this is the outside looking in, man. So everybody who, when S was on the podcast, we got his. He lives in Toronto. All of us live in Toronto, and we follow some of us work covering the Raptors. Some of us are fans of the Raptors. Everybody pays a lot of attention. Baker, you're from the DMV. You see this team from the outside. What do you think about this team? By the way, for audio listeners, Baker, who has been on this podcast before, is on the podcast again. He's about to talk to you.
Me personally, I definitely have more respect than other people do. Like when I talk to friends or family, they clearly don't see. They don't clearly see the Toronto as like a top level team.
Wait, your family's talking trash about the Raptors? Is this what's happening?
No, yeah, just they don't really I mean, because I watch a lot more basketball than they do, so they don't really watch as much unless it's on national television. But in my case, I'm even when me and you talked Sam about when they were playing the Wizards, I said I was kind of shocked that how bad they were and how inconsistent up and down they were all year, saying they can turn this around, they'll figure it out. They have Jakob Poeltl, they have a true center, so they'll figure it out. But they didn't improve in the standings. They didn't make any marginal strides. They didn't win a bunch of games. They didn't rip off a good stretch of basketball. They just it was win 1, lose 1, win 3, lose 3. It was just very it's just middling, and that's not where you want to be in an NBA team. So watching the game yesterday, I had to watch the second half because I left for Tadawar prayer. But just watching that game, they were in control for 2.5 quarters, and then Chicago decided to actually start playing more physical on the ball. They got some turnovers, and then it just fell apart from there. Zach LaVine, DeMar DeRozan just getting to the rim at will. So is just a this game was just a microcosm of what's happened. Obviously, missing 18 free throws is very bad, but it's just like it's very upsetting. But I didn't see like this result coming because it's the writing's been on the wall all season.
We all in the chat, we have opinions about the Thunder, who had like a great game last night, for example. We have opinions about how the Thunder should build despite not being as heavily invested in that team as we are in others. Despite not being as heavily invested in the Raptors, what do you think? Who do you think the Raptors should prioritize heading into the future?
Um, Obviously, you should build around you. You should obviously try to keep Scottie because he was the rookie of the year, and you don't want to let a player like that go. So you got like the Raptors are in a pretty good spot because they're not like in the same situation as a lot of the other playing teams. Like they're not in the situation of like Miami or like Atlanta where they're kind of just like they kind of have this mix of like just young guys and like old players. Like they can go in either direction if they want to, so they have that in their back pocket. um so like I definitely keeping Scotty, keeping try to keep OG because losing him is pretty. I know like everybody has like their take on OG and like he's not like is he this good or is he that good or is he this or that. And like people are like frustrated because like he's always in trade rumors and they always end up keeping him. But I think maybe you just try to keep him because um because he what he brings is like it's very unique and you can't get much of that value back no matter who you like send out for him. So I think try and keep him. And I think the odd man out this offseason is probably Gary Trent Jr. He missed a lot. He missed a ton of time. Um, he missed a ton of time. And then when he came back, he just wasn't right. And so I think he lost a lot of his value. And I brought this up like in our chat. I think Gary's on. I'm not sure any there. I'm not sure any team out there is gonna give him the contract he wants. I think he's gonna have to do the. He's gonna have to take the Malik Monk route, like a 1 year prove a deal on like some other team, and like if he plays well, he earns himself a payday from somebody else. So I think he's gonna be the odd man out, and obviously you have to prioritize Fred, Yak, since trade pretty action pick for him. So yeah, like they have their hands full this offseason because they have to fix this roster very bad. Oh my!
Keenan is in the
The legend.
The legend, man.
Okay. Just because the audio, Baker, I'm gonna boot you, brother. I appreciate
Yeah,
the insights.
no problem.
Enjoy eating, bro. Enjoy the rest of your night. And
Hey, I have
hey,
one question though. Like, I have a couple questions before I leave.
mhm.
Number one, Trey, how long until your smile is back? And Nabeel, and Nabeel, um, I don't know if you've talked about it enough, but like, I need some Kobe Bufkin talk. Okay. All right,
All right,
peace,
brother.
peace, guys, peace.
See you, Baker.
See you, Richard.
All right, joining us now, Keenan. Key, the Raptors just lost. We're getting opinions from a bunch of different people about who they want to build around heading into the future. What do you want this team to look like in a couple years? Who do you want it to feature most heavily?
Well, honestly, I think it's going to be built around, well, Pascal or Scottie, and you build around them the same ways. Whatever you build around Pascal, you can kind of just like grandfather into Scottie when Scottie's ready to take that number one position. Bunch of shooting, more dynamic guards, things that will make his life easier. Uh, I'm just like looking at how old Siakam is now. Like the other option is kind of throwing it all the way, getting rid of Siakam, getting a bunch of pieces that you can build with Scottie for the future. Just because of how old Siakam is. I think that they could have done this before, but they didn't. So I think you kind of just have to wipe your hands clean and get whatever you can assets from that player and wish him well, and hopefully he can be in contention.
Can I tell you something? I've never heard the term grandfather in, but when you said it, it actually made sense to me. That I'm kind of spitting.
Really?
Yeah. I actually think that's like a clever way to frame it. Is that if Scottie and Pascal, everybody was complaining about them having overlapping skills, it means that you can build the team for one, and another guy can kind of inherit a lot of the same things
Yeah.
as another guy, perhaps. However, the skill development shakes out for Pascal, who's probably at the end of his curve, right? Like he's probably not adding a ton of other stuff.
Yeah.
We'll see. There'll be discrete things, but Scottie, who has tons to add, I think that's like a really clever way to frame it. We're gonna come back to you, Key, but first we got to go to what Baker wanted to hear from Trey, and we'll talk about Kobe Bufkin at the end of the podcast in a bit. So Trey, the smile, what's the status?
I haven't smiled since the game.
You're smiling
You're
now,
right
bro.
now.
It's not the same. This is like
It's a forced smile.
like how like Two-Face has that smile like this.
It's a smile under duress.
I'm smiling to hold on to life currently. It's a tough loss. It's probably like a top 10 Raptors loss ever, I would say.
What's it gonna take?
Masai, I need to hear this exit interview, and I need him to say something more direct than what he said at the deadline, because he was like, "I don't know, bro. We're gonna have to find out." But this time we need something direct.
Before we get to the Kobe Bufkin talk a little bit more about what Keenan wants to talk about. But I was at the exit interviews for the players and Nick Nurse today. Does anybody have any questions about like quotes you saw, things you saw floating around, vibes, etc.?
I have one. Scottie mentioned his conditioning like a few times, which is that's something that I really took away from the season, because he picks up everybody 94 feet, whether he can guard him or not.
So that was really interesting, because a lot of the time I get the sense I got Scottie to hunker down and talk about post coverages with me for like 2.5 minutes. It was a miracle. But Scottie is a guy who he really like stiff arms questions from the media constantly. So when he was asked what he wants to improve upon, he and OG both today were like, I just want to become the best player I can be, like 80 times. Roll it back. And then so Scottie finally relented and was like, I guess my conditioning so I can play like the way I want to play. And then everybody was like, your conditioning, what's this about your conditioning? So he got asked about it like 3 times. And when he got asked about it, like, oh, your conditioning, you want to improve it, it was like he took offense to that notion, and he immediately like pushed back. He's like, no, my conditioning is good. And then he got asked about it later, and he's like, no, I like my conditioning. I feel really good right now, actually. And that's kind of like how it shook out. So I don't know if he actually cares about his conditioning, but I do know that the initial quote like got a bit of buzz, and somebody actually tagged me under the tweet, was like, what's this about? And I had to be like, well, he like circled back on it and denied it like a minute later, so I don't know what to make of it. I like being in better. He's heavier now, and not heavier in a bad way. Like he put on muscle. That's like, if between all of us here, Keenan probably would run the fastest marathon, right? Like it's it's like you have like the svelte frame. You could be more slick. You can have more stamina. And Scottie having like the biggest shoulders in the world, that's a lot to carry around. So maybe there's something to it. But as far as actually being Scottie, like going and working on his stamina exclusively to try and like make the most of it in the offseason, I don't know. I guess we'll see.
Were Masai and Bobby or any of the front office personnel like around?
Mm-mm. It was just PR people. PR people, players, and media like myself. But Masai and Bobby, maybe they're working them phones, dude. I don't know.
Maybe. I agree with what Trey said though. That press conference he did after the deadline, I in my time, at least in his time with the Raptors, in all the interviews, press conferences he's done, I've never seen him look more unsure and less confident in my life. So like I think some assuredness from him at this exit interview about like firmly evaluating, picking a direction, and really, really committing to whatever direction that is would be nice to see.
It's yeah, it is really interesting. It is really funny because at that press conference that you're referring to, when he used the term selfish, right, that the team had been playing selfishly, that was used by media as like the impetus to kind of elicit a response from a player. Because if a media person says like the team seems like it's playing selfish, a player will say no, we're not. But then if you say Masai said you guys are playing selfishly, they're like, okay, yeah, maybe we were doing some selfish things. But another funny thing that happened was that Fred was talking about how playing with all of that chaos might not work anymore, and they might have to find and craft a new way forward. That was brought up to Pascal that he said that, and Pascal was like, "Did Fred actually say that?" Because he was like, "Wow, he actually said that." Damn. Regardless, Keenan, any other thoughts for us?
Um, it's honestly just on Fred.
Yeah, yeah. Let's talk Fred.
We fell to our knees in the bar. There was four of us. We are all screaming no when he shot that shot with 2 minutes left. It felt like Denzel Valentine. I just,
Come on.
Right.
I'm
He had
not gonna lie.
26 in the game.
What?
He had 26 in the game.
That shot it just really hurt, and it felt like an explanation of the entire Raptors season. Just that one play.
So
In terms of Nick Nurse, like I'm kind of over him. Like I think that he's there to bring players to the ceiling. He's not there to like bring them like in development wise. Like he's there to like, oh, I'm a championship coach. I'm gonna go here, work with the tools that I have, and win a championship and deal with all these multiple personalities and bring the hammer down. He's not the type of guy to like develop and give people opportunities, give them minutes, and kind of just work them along. So I think that we need a new guy, definitely in that regard.
I think that is consensus in most of the people that I've talked to. When Blake and I just however many hours ago
Yeah.
did the reaction podcast, like we both said that we didn't expect Nurse to be back. And I think that we were both pretty happy, pretty like okay with that. Like, yep, that seems sensible that the team and the coach part ways amicably. But as far as Fred, the thing I kind of want to stick on is like the anecdotes of missed shots. I think that they exist a bit larger, but I think that there is also some bad shot decisions in there. But
Mm-hmm.
also like when you said dynamic guards earlier. I'm not going to make you name dynamic guards or anything like that, but would you rather they try and pursue that avenue via the draft, like a dynamic guard to pair with Scottie and OG, or
Yeah,
would you rather them try to upgrade Fred's position right now via trade or something like that?
I don't know. I'm looking at the team and like in 2023, we're not a roster based on shooting like at all. We don't even have like a 3 point variance that we can be like, yeah, this is how we can reach our ceiling and nobody can beat us. Like that's not. And it was really evident when we were playing like teams like Indiana and Golden State, and these guards would kill us. And it's like I wish we had a player like that, like a Jordan Poole, a Maxey. Like if we could draft somebody like that, that would be awesome on this team. And like I'm looking at even at the Indiana roster, and it's like, yo, throw Pascal on that roster and imagine the type of things he could do with the amount of shooting and the guard depth and all the other aspects that they have, even just having Miles Turner. But yeah, to answer your question in like a short, I would love to draft one.
That makes sense. I think that's really sensible. I think that aligns with I guess we'll just all four of us. What position, if the Raptors in an ideal world can get best player available, and it's also the position you think fits this team best, what position is it? And we'll start with Nabeel.
I would say like point guard, or if we want to do away with positions, primary ball handler, because as it stands, we don't have a prospect in the farm for an eventual Fred replacement. And whether you want him traded or you want him retained, I personally don't see Fred being on this team at worst in the next 2 to 3 years. So, I think having essentially developing a replacement for him would be ideal. And, I'm sure we'll get into draft stuff more later and there's more time for that. But like just where the range we're falling in, I think there will be some good lead guards that reasonably are the best player available in that slot to take.
And Keenan, it's you're still on the guard. That would be your
Yeah,
ideal situation.
guard, or if we can get a shooting big, somebody just stretch it out a little bit, do some big things, but not essentially all the stuff that Jakob does, but give like a different look that we kind of had when we had Marcus Gasol and Ibaka. We were very versatile in that, where we could have a pick and pop, or we could have a guy who plays more traditional down low and more as like a hub in the elbow.
And Trey, what do you want?
I would say I'm probably more bullish on Pascal as a primary ball handler than most. So I want more. I want a guard, obviously, but I would lean more to someone that's going to handle tertiary duties, like a guy like Jet Howard, who can come off of DHO. He's going to be able to spot up. He'll be able to attack a closeout, 2 dribbles, hit a jump shot. I think Gary Trent Jr. played very well, like attached to Pascal because of those reasons. And if you can multiply that across the team, it creates more space for him. And when he has that space, he looks like a top 15, sometimes even top 10 player. And then also just opens up more lanes for guys like OG, Scottie, who can then utilize like their strength and speed to be more effective cutters because there isn't 4 guys chilling in the paint.
I think, yeah, I fall in that group as well. Primary ball handler, if you can get like a good primary ball handler, just do it and then hope that that primary ball handler can scale down and do some of the tertiary stuff. But if you can get, as Trey said, like a tertiary dynamic guard, not only does that assist a lot of what the Raptors are doing, but the roster imbalance just really calls for it. I think everybody here wanted Jeff Doughton Jr. to sign that to be signed on and to have a chance to play in the play-in game and to play the last couple games of the season. But we all know that he's not going to radically change. That was kind of like, this guy should be rewarded for what he's given to the team. Good guy, and he can actually hoop, but he's not changing anything at a significant margin. They need good guards. And as much as the guard position is changing in the NBA and it's getting bigger, like that's the biggest difference, is that some of the big guys can do interesting things, but the biggest difference is that like a big point guard today is 6'7", and a regular size point guard today is probably like 6'4". And a 6'4" point guard used to be massive in the NBA, and that's where it's changing. So if the Raptors can add for roster balance, for that dynamism, especially like I was in doing that piece on the shooting development, thinking back to 2019-20, where the Raptors, not only did they have Kyle Lowry and they had OG Anunoby and Pascal Siakam to take set shots, but they could occupy so much of the defense with Norman Powell and Fred VanVleet in motion, and having Pascal to kind of collapse the defense and Kyle there to make sense of it. It was just like, that team had really great roster balance. That's why they could achieve so much more than you thought they could. And the Raptors have really no roster balance, and it's allowed for them to achieve a lot less than probably many people thought they would. Keenan and I probably don't have. Do you have I don't have a prospect at the top of my head. I'm about to dive into draft stuff now that the season's gone. I still haven't slept since the season has ended, fellas. I'll start after I sleep. Keenan, do you have a prospect? Because I don't.
A prospect? No, but I always go with the safe thing: get a Nova guard or get a Kentucky.
That's, hey man,
it does work.
Especially you got Quickly, you got all these guys coming up. Like, there's no sense in trying.
Is there do you guys know if there's like a Kentucky or a Nova guard that's like kind of hanging around the 10 to 15 range in this?
Villanova, no. Yeah, Cam Whitmore isn't really like offers the same things, but Cason Wallace for sure. Like if I were to do and I know you hate comp, Samson, but I'm gonna give a comp. He's similar and don't get upset, Keely. He's similar in the sense of a lot of the things that Alex Caruso does.
I like him.
Except for when he hit that corner 3 last night, bro.
Yeah, he offers some shooting and some tertiary passing. Like there isn't at the 10 to 15 range. Like if they want a ball handler, I think they're gonna have to reach and swing to get what they want. There's guys like Bufkin, but I don't think it really depends if we fall at 11 or I think we're somewhere between 11 and 13. But they're probably gonna have to reach, and ideally, the safer bet is rely on someone with plus level skills like a Grady Dick, Jet Howard, who can shoot, punish closeouts to play off of the All NBA forward that we have. Whereas trying to reach for somebody and hoping that they'll be able to take over the main duties of a top 15 player seems like a lot to ask.
Nabeel, who do you have your eyes on in that range?
11 to 13, I think.
Because you've been pining for it quite loudly, dog. You better like somebody, I swear.
I've been waiting for this, man. Cason's a good bet. Actually, Sansa, whenever you start doing your deep dive, Cason, some of the defensive clips, if you miss the Kyle Lowry transition, body up, vertical volleyball spike contest, Cason's got a lot of those, and he actually connects on the ball with his hands. It's wild to see. He really is a really, really fun instinctual defensive prospect. I think that's the other thing. I know we've talked about Fred's, point of attack defense and where that was and where that is now. I think Cason is probably, if not the best, like a top 2, top 3 point of attack defender in this draft as a prospect. He's really strong. He's got good length, great hands. He competes, and I mean, he's a great, weak side shot contester for a guard too, which is, you don't find that a lot. So he'd be good, and his shooting profile is really underrated. I don't have the exact numbers, but I think he was like high 60s, low 70s in terms of finishing at the rim, whether that's dunks or layups. Capable mid-range shooter. Was really good was really solid as a spot up shooter. Has a nice projectable shot, and the passing reads were the big swing skill for him, I think. And he really developed that, not the same, but similar to the passing stuff you saw Brandon Miller sort of develop as the season at Alabama went along. So I think he'd be great. I don't think he's going to be available at 11. Like, I'd be pretty surprised if he was. I think he will probably go somewhere between like 7 to 10. But it's fun. You mentioned the tertiary ability and, not necessarily a primary creator, maybe someone who has the potential to do that, but someone who can be that connector, can make shots, create for others and do all those things. I mean, it's a rough comparison, and I'm not trying to compare the players, but like a guard Scottie almost, if you will, in a sense, just conceptually. And Bufkin, ticks all those boxes. I'll just read for you a real quick stat. So since, I think, how far back does this database go? Since 2008, a list of freshmen and sophomores with a usage above 20, assist percentage above 17, an assist to turnover ratio greater than 1.5, which is ideally at least what you want to see if you want to project like a primary ball handler at the next level. A block percentage above 2, a steal percentage above 2, 40 made threes, and 80 makes at the rim. Since 2000.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
On the Thad Young stat hunting, where does this rank? Like 1 to 10, 10 being the Thaddiest stat of all time.
This is like a
6?
solid 6. This is solid 6. Okay. Ja Morant, Lonzo Ball, Kobe Bufkin. That's
they should draft that guy then.
And exactly, that's it. That's the solid job right there.
Kobe Bufkin's really good. I think
Josh likes him, so I'm in.
And analytic, exactly. I credit Tim and Josh, honestly, because Josh was tweeting about him in December. Tim also brought him up as a connector.
Don't credit him ever. Just like,
hey man, listen. Listen, man, I still want my free medical advice, okay? So I'm going to give Tim all the credit. But no, and so he plays on the Michigan team with Jet. And when Jet, like, hurt his ankle towards the end of the year, he got, like, real creation reps. And then you saw him, like, going from, like, a dude who was just spotting up, catch and shoot, coming off, pin downs, putbacks, like, every single shot type you could imagine he was involved in. He just became this primary creator, and he looked good. Like, his handle was tight. He was making really good reads, reading the second line of the defense, got to the rim, finished, showed off his length, has really quick hands, is a very capable defender. And, like, you could see that he could be a connector, but then when he was given more opportunity and usage and primary reps, he really shined. And I think, ideally, if you're going to come in, it's not like at this point, you're going to have a rookie come in and immediately take backup guard minutes. But he could be a connector, I think, on, pretty early in the NBA. And you can project him as like a primary guy. So to me, I think, yeah, and he fits the Raptors profile and likely of guards they'd like to draft. You look at Delano, even Scottie, all those, defensive metrics and tools that you want in a guard or a primary creator. He has all that. So I think he just checks so many boxes and he's a really easy fit.
Trey, I know you have Bufkin thoughts, so let's hear them.
Yeah, I'm a huge Bufkin fan. I think I mentioned on the pod before. He offers a lot of the upside swing that Jordan Poole does, where he can both play off the ball with a primary scorer and ball handler, where he can run off pin downs, take the ball off a DHO, and finish at the rim. And he's a really good finisher. He can offer some of those creations and maybe lead a bench lineup, say 2-3 years down the road. The scary part with him is that a lot of his stock is still based on a small stretch of the season where he got the opportunity. So it's really dependent on whether you think the former or latter is like his ideal situation as a player.
But 2 out of 2 of the informed members of this podcast are willing to take that bet. You believe the small sample?
I do. I think he offers a lot of what the Raptors need, and he actually defends, which is very rare from a player with like that archetype. I don't think if the Raptors are thinking we need a rookie player that's going to provide rotation minutes next season, I don't think he's the person. Like, there's a really good chance with him trying to get into the league, and a lot of what he does is analyzing, understanding the angles, and taking those angles and trying to get to the rim. I don't think he's going to be able to do that in year one. Similar to Jordan Poole, where he won off similar reasons and shot 39% in his first year. He's going to need time to develop, which is why I'm more conservative on our pick, and I want a tertiary player who's probably going to play well the next year.
That makes sense. Key, before we get out of here, any parting shots for the listeners? Any thoughts on the draft, the Raptors, the Blue Jays? This is a Blue Jays friendly podcast.
Draft. I'm looking at. I heard you guys say Grady Dick, and if he's around that range, I would love to have him on my team. Just a knockdown shooter, movement shooter. That would be great. I haven't watched like a million games of his, but I've watched enough to be like, okay, this could be a guy. And I've listened to some other pods where they're pretty high on him as well. In terms of the Raptors, we won recently, so like all of this is kind of just butter at the end of the day. Like, I never thought I'd be celebrating a championship parade in my city for the Toronto Raptors. Like, in my lifetime, I never thought that was going to happen. So for that to happen, this is all just kind of whatever at this point.
Perspective.
Guys, we're winning it, man. Like, we're actually gonna do something this year. Last year, some growing pains. They said it was gonna be a movie, and I guess it wasn't the best movie. This year, I'm hoping to get like everything everywhere all at once. So yeah.
Damn, fire. All right. Does that feel like a podcast, fellas? Does anybody feel like they want to share anything else?
I'll go with you. I'll share my.
I just want.
Go ahead.
I just want Key to know. Masai is listening to this pod. I need you to off that championship. What are you doing for us now? It's all about now.
Masai's lost all goodwill with me, for sure. I'm sorry. I'm not as emotional as yesterday, but there's a reason why he didn't speak today.
Okay, let me say this. No more Division 6-9. Let's get guys who know how to play basketball. Stop trying to teach tight ends how to shoot a basketball. It's not working. I'm tired of it. I need a guy who want to hoop. I need a guy who can score. Defense is whatever, man. We'll figure that out. But, figure the scoring is what I want. I'd rather be Sacramento right now. Give me a top offense in the league and the defense, whatever. At least it's exciting hoops.
I think, that it's kind of, fan bases always react differently to team building than the other teams, because like front offices, they don't watch nearly as much basketball as you'd think. They just look at results. So it's probably no wonder that the Raptors hung on to Vision 6-9 longer than they maybe should have, because it was the ugliest basketball in the world, but they weren't watching from night to night. They were like, yeah, I guess they're winning minutes. Like, the starting lineup works, something like that. All right, that feels like a good place to end it. As for everybody listening, once again, you can hit the link in the bio to support the podcast and the sponsor. And for S, for Baker, for Key, for Nabeel, for Trey, for myself, I hope you enjoyed this podcast. This was completely unique and different from anything Trey and I have done. Actually, in fact, I've never done a podcast like this, just like a rotating, people pop in. Baker speaking from like a liminal space with that deep ass voice of his. You can't see him at all. And yeah, it was fun. Thanks to everybody for hopping on. Thanks to everybody for listening in. If you're listening on YouTube, like the video, subscribe over at raptorsrepublic.com. That's the most important one. And if you're listening on the podcast channel, thanks for tuning in and chopping it up with us. If you got into this in the morning or at night, have a blessed day and goodbye.